Underworld Stackfest. I'm back. I'm not buying for, but I'm back for one more show before the season's over, and I'm thrilled to be here. I think I can say Happy New Year. I don't know if that's like too premature, but since we're almost there and I probably won't see you guys again, Happy New Year. I'm the Luch. I'm here with Dario and Matt. It's good to be here. We got a crazy slate, and I'm excited to dive in. So, Dario, Matt, what's going on, fellas? Good to see you.
Did no one in your living room back there?
No,
Everyone cleared out for the holidays or what?
Offense. No, that's the running joke that like a couple of us use this virtual background sometimes, so we all live together. So all the RotoGrinders roommates are out, working for the day, and they stuck me at home. Just wrapped up my piano lessons behind me. So, I'm excited to talk about what we're going to do with the Chiefs and maybe some NFC North business.
So I didn't know I was walking into like a cold, stale joke there.
No, you're good. Oh man, what's going on, guys? It's good to see you.
I was gonna say, I think you can. I'm of the opinion you can say Happy New Year because it's the 30th. Like once you've got that 3 in the front, it's really like the month is over, therefore the year is over. That's my stance.
It's happening, guys. It's 2023 is happening officially.
It feels like this is a running stale like take as well, but it still feels like we're adding on to 2020. I just feel like the world kind of just melted from 2020 on to now, and now
that's a new take to me, man. I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that it's all three years has been one big shit year.
My generation likes
to
say
1,000 days. That's like 1,000 days of crap. I get it.
Been like
I like it. I'm
6 years of crap since like 2016.
Put the 1,000 in the back seat in the rear view, and we'll move on. I like it.
I mean, this week kind of started off crap because we had Thursday Night Football with Josh Dobbs and, backup running backs for Dallas and just, oh, gosh. And it just gets wonkier, I know I'm like wearing the Bime for hat. So like in terms of best ball, the Cardinals were the look ahead, stack this team for the playoffs, and now we're getting updates that like David Blau starting, and I have DeAndre Hopkins in season long everywhere, so that kind of shot me in the foot with McSorley starting. That's just 6 years of crap. You're right, Dario. This sucks, but I'm happy to be here. So
yeah, someone's got to talk about Week 17, even no matter how ugly it gets.
Yeah, all my Pollard teams got hurt. I'm hurt. I'm down. I'm hurting.
I definitely accidentally left him in some lineups. It was a real world's smallest violin moment for me.
Yep.
This is one of the more like messier fantasy playoffs in any format you could. It's just ridiculous with Jalen Hurts teams, Derrick Henry getting load managed before the Jaguars game, Tony Pollard obviously killing a lot of people too, DeAndre Hopkins, obviously not being relevant. I mean, I have Cooper Kupp on IR in a lot of places or just not relevant, and it's just this is a really messy couple of weeks, and there's only a couple of enticing games on the main slate, but I think the good games are going to be good, if that makes any sense. So I know we have a lot of interest in the NFC North as a whole. So, Dario, you want to elaborate a little bit? We could dive in there.
Sure. I think that this show, we'd like to talk about the biggest, juiciest games for stacking. And I think this week there's some pretty clear ones in the NFC North. You got the Lions and the Bears and the Vikings and the Packers. I think we can talk about the Lions and Bears first, just because that one does have the highest total, the two chalkiest quarterbacks. So I think that's probably going to be where a lot of the DFS attention lies this week. I think that a lot of the pieces on the Lions are very much in play because the Bears defense has just been completely horrendous the last few weeks. And I think the Bears side of things is a little trickier because Chase Claypool is questionable. Equanimeous St. Brown just got off the injury report. Khalil Herbert is back, so David Montgomery doesn't quite have the same stranglehold on that backfield that we've seen for the better part of the last few weeks. So I think the Bears side of things is a lot messier. Do you guys have any thoughts on that game from the jump?
I don't know, man. I want to play a lot of fields. I just want to do the inverted field stacks whenever possible, right? That's the theme, isn't it? Right? I mean, it's just I wish we had Darnell Mooney, dude.
Yeah, that's definitely. I mean, I was talking about this with some friends last night. It's like the amount of, or really the lack of weapons that Fields has to throw to, and like Darnell Mooney is like a wide receiver 2 on a good NFL team, and he was their wide receiver 1, and then they're just like completely like left empty-handed. I think that Cole Kmet is probably the primary stacking partner you want to look toward for Fields. Like, he's been getting a pretty solid target share, especially the last few weeks. He's at about 20% on the season, but I think it's higher if you just look at since Darnell Mooney was injured.
Yeah, Darnell Mooney, who had 140 targets last year and close to 1,500 air yards. I just want to say that. I just got to say it, man. God damn it. It would be so epic if they finally unlock, the moment they unlock Fields, Mooney goes to the IR. Really, really bad luck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, maybe we're looking ahead already to maybe a best ball value in 2023. What do you think of that? Woo! I would have just queued into something there.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny to think we were drafting Mooney in like the 5th, 6th round turn when Fields was like completely forgotten about in best ball. But live and you learn.
The game makes sense. The Lions defensively, they give up the highest percentage of target share to receivers at the 6th highest success rate. Who those receivers are going to be, like we just talked about, I don't know. While they don't give up a ton of targets to tight ends, they give up the highest success rate to tight ends. So
there you go.
Fields has kind of been glued to Kmet at times in the second half. So I think that's a pretty great take. I like it. I mean, yeah, Darnell Mooney, man.
Yeah, and according to our player pages, the Lions give up the most points to opposing quarterbacks on the ground. So that's probably partly juiced up by the fact that Justin Fields ran for 167 and 2 touchdowns on them last time they played each other.
Because of Fields, dude. They give up that many fantasy points to rushing quarterbacks because of the last time they played Fields.
So
it's almost too easy.
So Fields is getting them again. Well, that's
Fields is getting them again. This is the easiest stack of the year. Like Fields, Kmet, and then you do, you could put 2 Lions receivers in there.
Right. I think, this is a week where Amon-Ra is the chalkiest receiver on the slate, and for good reason. Yeah, I mean, the Bears have been eaten alive by slot receivers, and Amon-Ra has an absurd target share in his offense, even though, I mean, Jameson Williams, I think they've been working him up pretty slowly, so he hasn't really gotten to the point where he's like really carved into the offense and made a dent in Amon-Ra. But that also means,
this isn't even that big of a chalk percentage at this point. I'm looking at the projected ownership on RotoGrinders per Chris Gimino, 19.5%. I've seen it up in the high 20s on Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah,
week over week. This isn't that chalky.
This week is actually interesting because there's so many more games on the slate. So I think that's a big part of the reason for that.
So I like a little more now. God, Amon-Ra at 30%. Oh, it was just so crazy.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 54 targets over the last 5 games. So he's literally averaging 10 targets a game these days. And, he's not going to have the highest ADOT, but he's going to get the red zone looks. And like we said, this defense is just really prone to getting carved up by slot receivers. So, I mean, I think like you said, if you're doing the inverted field stack, take Fields, take Kmet, take Amon-Ra, and then maybe, I think Chark might be a little too, he's about 7-8% owned, but like, I think you could get unique with Chark and like a Swift or something like that, or I don't know. There's a lot of interesting options there on the Lions side of things. I mean, Shane Zylstra caught all 3 of their touchdowns last week. That was the most tilting thing I've ever seen. This tight end who had been the backup tight end for the better part of the time since TJ Hawkinson had departed, all of a sudden comes in with not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns, the entire day's worth of touchdowns for the Lions. That was that was massively tilting.
Well, Chark's route participation rate has remained consistent, right?
Mhm.
It's been 80%, 84, 86, 79, 85, 81, 82. His snap share has been consistent, right around 80.
Yes.
Nothing's changing.
Give me Chark. Give me
Give me
Chark.
Chark. This isn't fringy at all. I mean, if Eric were here, he'd be all over Chark. He'd be his play of the week.
I'm looking at Gridiron IQ on RotoGrinders. 34% of his targets have been 20 plus yards received. Like, that's just a ridiculously dumb ADOT. And the Bears
his
give up the
touchdown
fifth
rate's
most,
not that high. It should be higher.
The Bears have given up the 5th most targets of 20 plus yards downfield. I mean, give me splash play Chark at what, 4,300 on or 4,700 on DK, something like that, mid fours. I mean,
7.6% owned sounds about right. It's top 20 among wide receivers, and we talked about it because the slate's so deep. Is going to be lower percentages across the board. So he is, even sub 10% that's in the top 20. That still feels like you could get unique. You could juice that up to 15%. Right? The way we do things is we pick a few teams and a few games and we stack them up. And on the plays we like, we try to double the ownership. So double the exposure to the field, 15% Chark at least.
I love that call. I think it's great. And right, if you're multi-entering, you don't have to feel terrible going in with a script of maybe 100 teams and you have 15 DJ Chark teams and you're fine and you have some leverage and you don't have to feel too uncomfortable about it.
No, you feel great. Oh, you feel awesome. You go up to 20%. Again, it's not risky. It's not fringy. This isn't like, oh, Jameson Williams is back and we've seen a downtrend in his snap share and his usage. No, it's been the same. He's getting 100 yards every week.
Yep. I agree. I tell you what, though, I am glad that
they Sauce Gardner, okay, and that didn't work out so well.
Sacrificed him to Sauce that
week.
Right.
He sacrificed himself at the altar of Sauce Gardner, and then he's been 100 yards otherwise.
I can't argue.
Nothing not to like, for sure.
Yeah.
No, but I will tell you this about Detroit. I'm glad the new year is approaching because thankfully I'm running out of weeks to chase DeAndre Swift because
I know.
Just keep playing him. I'm a big talent guy. If you're going to give me 50% of snaps and a guy that talented, I have to keep playing him, right? Like,
I think that that kind of brings us to Khalil Herbert, I think, as an interesting pivot because Khalil Herbert actually, even though his stat line was pretty unimpressive last week, he did play about almost 40% of the snaps for the Bears. And we know that he has been the more talented back than David Montgomery. He's obviously way cheaper in DFS. He's only 4,000 and he's pretty much completely off the grid in ownership. I think if I told you guys that one of the Bears running backs was going to break a 60-yard touchdown, I think we'd all agree that it would be Herbert. I think that given the matchup, given the return to his pretty typical usage, I'm not totally out on sprinkling a little bit of Herbert from this game. What do you guys think on that?
I love doing that. I loved it. You all loved it. I was pushing Kareem Hunt when it wasn't a thing.
Even
right?
when I gave up on him,
and it didn't work. Like it didn't work that particular week that I was pushing him. After everyone else was long past using Kareem Hunt, I still go back to that well because yes, it's a low probability play, but when you're in these big tournaments and the payout is extreme if you hit the nuts. Well, yeah, you gotta play guys that if they get in the game due to an injury, a high ankle sprain in the first quarter to David Montgomery, they can put up 30 points. That's the kind of 1B running back that Khalil Herbert is. There's a handful of those guys around the league, right? It was that was the original case for Tony Pollard. Right, that was the original case for Tony Pollard before they started actually using him enough to have standalone value. It was, well, if Dallas is going to be in the shootout and Zeke gets hobbled in the first quarter or second quarter, Tony Pollard could go nuclear. You want to sprinkle some of him in just in case. That's an outcome that happens every week in the NFL. And when you're in a tournament with tens of thousands of entries, a couple Herberts in there always makes sense if it's a game that we like.
And I mean, we don't have to mention that the Lions run defense has been bad for the better part of the year. There was it's funny because this was an interesting argument going into last week against the Panthers running backs. The Lions run defense had just gotten so hot and they were, stopping everyone on the ground. I think they were the best defense against the run in EPA per play over the course of like weeks 13 through 15. And then what do you know? They get absolutely gashed by Deontay Foreman and Chuba Hubbard. So I think that was a bit of a lesson in not reading too far into tiny sample sizes. And I think overall, this is still a team that other teams are going to want to run on. We know the Bears are obviously built run first. So yeah, I think I'm probably more inclined to play Herbert than Montgomery, considering ownership and cost. You just might as well take the cheaper one.
Wow, really? More than okay. All right. Well, Antonio Gibson was ruled out, so now we have Brian Robinson.
Oh wow,
also
officially out.
Yeah, Brian Robinson at 5.2K on DraftKings.
I knew he was trending in the wrong direction, but yeah, that's definitely news.
Right. So that's going to be another inexpensive option that's going to flood the zone because, they're, look who they're facing. It's Cleveland at home. I mean, it's the Brian Robinson week that you've ever been hoping. Brian Robinson's, this is like his moment.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, I love the volume. He just hasn't impressed me as a runner. Like when I've watched him run, he just runs straight and puts his head down, and I understand that's fine, but the volume and the opportunity is going to be there.
You're looking at 100. You're trying to get the 100-yard bonus, and a touchdown.
Incredible.
That's what you're trying to get,
mm-hmm.
right? Then you can get to 20 fantasy points.
I'm just disappointed because Gibson's the better runner, and we saw this back since July in training camp when they're like, "Well, he'll return kicks for us." It's why is he returning kicks for you? But
oh man,
I don't
You're
know
tilting at windmills at this point. I mean, this is I mean, don't even get us started at player profiler about Antonio Gibson versus Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson's not cool, man.
But before we transition, though, I mean, even without Fields, just for large field tournaments, Herbert and DJ Chark together kind of gets me excited because you have a world of salary at a combined we have Herbert at no ownership right now. I'm sure maybe that'll pick up a little bit because that game is going to catch up, get some more steam. But I mean, if you're going to get those guys,
this dude, they never let the quality 1B running back dip down to 4K. They never let that happen, even when particular running backs are dominating the starter is dominating the touches. They will always hover. If that 1B is a quality player, they'll always hover him in that whatever the 5K range.
Yep.
You're never getting 4K on a player as talented as Khalil Herbert. It's weird. I'm very happy they did it. It's almost like a glitch in the DraftKings system. It's almost like a throwback to 2015.
Yeah, I know. I think that skinny stack is really nice. I love pairing Chark with Herbert. Hoping this game projects to go pretty big, but it could go totally nuclear, and I think they would definitely get involved in the scoring.
Yeah, look at it. They have Madison at 4.5. They've got Kareem Hunt at 4.5. They've posted these guys up at 4.5 at the very least. I mean, that it used to be they post them up at 5.0, but now that running backs production is down, it's coming down. But that they would let Herbert go all the way down to the Stone Min is wild to me.
Both guys have pretty high ceilings for home run hitters in this game at a combined 7% projected ownership. To get a piece of that game with guys who should be playing significant roles on both offenses is worth a couple of shares.
Right.
I'm so happy that Dario said he'd have more Herbert than Montgomery. That makes me so happy they would say that. Oh my God. Dario's not that guy. I'm that guy. So this is great.
Look at that. I come on the show and I bring everyone together.
Yeah. Oh, this is fantastic news.
Anyway,
I think with that, we should probably talk about the other half of the AFC North, which is the Packers and the Vikings. Another, very exciting game. Kind of Packers obviously playing for their season, same as the Lions are. And then obviously these teams hate each other. They played each other in week 1. And that was the game where Christian Watson dropped the 75-yard bomb on the first play for the Packers. Justin Jefferson absolutely scorched the Packers defense. And, a lot has changed about these teams since, but surprisingly, the Packers are favored in Green Bay, even though they're like, 6 games behind the Vikings in the standings.
Listen, the Vikings have been a controversial take all season from, the betting world. Are they frauds? Are they not frauds? They're like undefeated in 1-score game. Advanced metrics say this, that, and the other thing. Whatever. The football guys are saying they're winning games, right?
They're frauds, dude. They're frauds. They're frauds. It's a shame that the Lions aren't going to make the playoffs. The Lions have to go to Green Bay to close out the season, and they're going to be clear dogs in that game. And the probabilities now crash down like 20% chance they make the playoffs. The Lions, man, I thought they were supposed to make it.
They're had
out.
To win in Carolina.
They're out. They couldn't beat Carolina.
Speaking of Carolina, I mean, Carolina and Tampa Bay are playing each other this week with pretty much their seasons on the line. Whoever wins that game is in the driver's seat for winning that division, which is, I think, probably not a game we'll get around to in this show, but just another thing I'll be watching this week.
I kind of like the Panthers in that game.
Yeah, so, I mean, it looks like Christian Watson, I think he's kind of the make or break piece for the Packers offense in terms of how things shake out. Obviously, he's hyper explosive if he does play, had like 8 touchdowns in 4 games at one point. And then I think that he hasn't practiced all week with his hip injury. For me, it's always concerning when you see a guy get injured in the first half and then he's in his street clothes on the sideline in the second half. That's like really doesn't bode well for them playing the following week.
And he hasn't practiced. Does he practice? Do we have the practice report for today?
I don't know if today's is in, but I know he didn't practice yesterday or Wednesday. It looks like they don't have Friday in yet.
Yeah, they're on Central Time, so we'll know soon. He's unlikely to play, regardless.
Yeah, that's how I see it too. So I think that it kind of, he hasn't missed a game in a little while now. I think when was his last time he missed a game? It was probably like week 5 or so.
Dobbs is going to be popular, man.
Yeah.
They're going to go to Dobbs. You know, the Brian Robinson people are going to go to Dobbs. You know it. Everybody knows it. If you like Brian Robinson, you like Romeo Dobbs. These are, basically Romeo Dobbs is the Brian Robinson of wide receivers.
Yeah.
He's like, they both run like a 4.6, 4.5, average speed, average size, just, get what's there, never do anything special, never exceed expectations in any kind of meaningful way. It's just that Dobbs actually drops passes. So imagine if Brian Robinson also fumbled at the same rate that Antonio Gibson fumbled. That would be Romeo Dobbs. I think why I won't be playing any Romeo Dobbs. Thank you very much.
To me, the ownership disparity between Dobbs and Lazard is too wide. Like, for example, I'm looking at about 12% ownership projected for Lazard, who should be the number 1 receiver. But we know that Dobbs has had some pretty nice target share games. He's had games with, 8 targets, 6, 7, and his projected ownership is below 1%. So I think,
well, that's gonna jump up though as soon as Watson gets ruled out.
I wonder if let's see if the ownership is still figuring Watson's in. You're right.
Yeah, that's gonna jump up.
But he's only 4,700 and Lazard is 5,400. I think as long as Dobbs
has some games with 100+ air yards. He has 2 games with 100+ air yards.
To me, if his ownership doesn't get completely out of hand, I think he's a piece that you want to mix in this game, especially because the Packers running backs. Oh my God, how can you trust Aaron Jones at this point? He's been playing through a shin/ankle/knee/glute injury for over a month now. He had his worst fantasy game of the season last week. AJ Dillon keeps churning. He's probably going to be more popular because people are completely out on Jones.
How about 10 red zone targets for Romeo Dobbs this year? Holy cow. Is that more than Christian Watson? I feel like wouldn't that be amazing if that were true? I don't think it is. That Christian Watson's touchdowns would all come on explosive plays. Thank God it's not true. It's not true. Red zone targets for Christian Watson, 14. Okay. 9 for Dobbs. Dobbs is pretty close.
He missed a month too.
Right, yeah. So you missed about that's crazy. But Watson has 9 touchdowns.
Which is also crazy.
Yeah. So Dobbs
mean-
touchdown total is not gonna come anywhere close to that. So 9 red zone targets for Dobbs, 3 touchdowns. So you gotta play some Dobbs. I hate saying that. I hate myself for saying it. I'm almost never playing that guy ever.
Yeah, you said
This
the
would be the
Vikings are
one
frauds.
scenario where you would play him.
You said the Vikings are frauds. If there's anywhere, I mean, the pass defense is so bad that you got to play some Dobbs. I'm curious. I want to see where the sports books open up his receiving line at. It was 28.5 last week. I know Watson got hurt, but his snap share jumped up from 30% to 60%, which was encouraging to see because they've kind of babied him against the Rams, but clearly he's healthy enough to take on a good sizable workload. That, I mean, if his line opens up in like the 30s, like I'm smashing the over because we can't pretend he never had a rapport with Aaron Rodgers. When Watson wasn't in the picture, it was Dobbs. It was Dobbs for like.
I mean, even in
Just wish
Dobbs'
he was
first
better.
game back, I remember people were like, "Holy crap, how's he getting more looks than Watson?" I mean, it was a small sample size the first half of that game, obviously, but I think that Dobbs has a little bit of that Aaron Rodgers trust that is ultimately the most important piece of this offense for any skill player, honestly.
Because he runs like half of his routes between 0 and 9 yards, and that's what Rodgers wants to do. Just like quick slant, 8 yards, 9 yards, and then he has like 7 of those catches for like 70 yards and a touchdown, and he's probably optimal, But the running back situation does get messy. Like
Randall Cobb has a 15-point ceiling.
Yeah, I agreed too. Randall Cobb. I mean, I think Randall Cobb. Those are going to be the 3. That's their 3 receiver set if Watson is out. Yeah, we can. And I guess we can talk about the Vikings side of this game while we got the optimizer here pulled up. Obviously, you're playing the Vikings. You're going to play some Kirk.
The bottom line is I kind of hate the Packers side of this. It's gross. And who the hell is stacking Rodgers? I mean, it's one thing to play a pocket passer. It's another thing to play a pocket passer who plays slow and has some of the worst receivers. Like, I just don't see how you can in a big field tournament. I don't see how you could play Aaron Rodgers. I'm not doing it. Right. When we're talking about playing Dobbs, I'm talking about as a run back on these Cousins double stacks. Like
any of them, really. Any of them.
You're going to play Dobbs as a run back on Cousins double stacks. Absolutely. But I think the guy I'm going to play the most is going to be Dylan. Right.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Play Packers taking a 10-point lead and Vikings in comeback mode. Just align your lineups to that particular game.
Right. Because I think Kirk Cousins isn't going to win you a tournament if he's playing in a positive game script. Like, the Vikings aren't built to beat you purely by throwing the ball. He's not Patrick Mahomes where he's just going to throw for 3 touchdowns every week, no matter who he's playing against. I think you're right that you want to play this game as if that game script is going to happen for your DFS lineups. And then I think that, I mean, obviously Justin Jefferson is like the best player in all of fantasy right now. Is that a hot take? Like, I mean,
no,
he's just been insane lately.
What do you mean a hot take? No, he's one of, if not the best fantasy wide receiver of all time.
Yeah.
He has the highest dynasty value for any receiver in the history of Player Profiler by a long shot. The difference between him and the next skill position player is as wide as it's ever been for any player in Player Profiler history in Dynasty.
Yeah, what he's doing is unreal right now. So I think, I mean, if you're playing Kirk Cousins, you're kind of just like locking in Jefferson right off the bat. And then I think we could force a double stack here, see what comes out, whether it's like Thielen.
I don't believe this. Okay.
Hawkinson.
So Jamino has Aaron Rodgers at 5% owned on the slate, right? Which doesn't sound like a lot, but again, because it's so spread out, that's ranked number 6 among quarterbacks on the slate. Aaron Rodgers has one game with more than 20 DK points. One game this year. And the total was 20.36. Okay. That's not game log watching.
Yeah.
That's just knowing what you're getting or not getting in this case.
How many
So no,
games?
Aaron Rodgers stacks aren't the way to go.
How many games of 300 passing yards does Aaron Rodgers have? It's like
This year?
duh. Yeah, he is. I'll set the
Any?
line at. No, it's 0.
It's
Like,
0. I'm looking at 291 was his high.
They want to run the ball. Like they like,
And that was against Detroit.
Yeah, he's not your guy.
Yeah, I mean his prop this week is 240.5.
The Vikings at home. Oh.
I mean, the fact that it is at home for the Packers, just the weather aspect of it does concern me a little bit more for DFS, right? Like these teams are not going to air it out in the same way they would in the Dome in Minnesota. So,
well, I looked at the weather report for Sunday.
All right, what do we got?
It's amazing. It's 37, no wind.
That is as good as it gets in Green Bay on January
10%
1st.
Chance of precipitation. It's going to be up to 40 degrees, partly cloudy, 8-mile-an-hour winds.
That's pretty nice.
That's what can justify the Cousins double stacks.
Yeah, let's put in. Should we pencil in DJ Shark in the meantime? We'll get one piece from another game we like. Force the double stack.
Oh, I like this. I like this.
Keep a tight end out of the flex.
I always like high correlation. I'm a high correlation guy.
And then I don't think we're probably not going to look to stack Dalvin Cook with Cousins, right? We should knock out the running back stacks.
Running back stack. Oh, I definitely want some. I want some TJ Hawkinson as a secondary option.
Yeah. We left Hawkinson option. In. There he
is. There he is.
I mean, AJ Dillon, just like we asked for.
Oh,
Zonovan Knight.
Is Zonovan Knight going to deliver this week, or is he over?
I mean, he's still been getting the work and the snaps. I mean, we're projecting him same as the last few weeks. He's still clearly ahead of Michael Carter in their offense. And
all right,
I mean,
they have Seattle. Let's go.
Mike White is back.
Let's go. Mike White's back. Oh my God, this is a Zonovan Knight week. We're not going to cover that game because that game's actually not that interesting. Although it is more interesting with Mike White.
Right. It's another. To me, there are 3 games this week where the team seasons are on the line. That's the Dolphins and the Patriots. Dolphins are going to have to be playing Teddy Bridgewater there, and both of those teams are playing for their season. Seahawks and the Jets, like you just mentioned, Seahawks need to win out to get that wild card, and the Jets do too. And then the Bucks and the Panthers, like I said, driver's seat for the division is on the line in that one.
Just thought, I can't believe it. I'm so shocked. I figured, his snap share fell below 40%. Guy delivers 2 straight 2.3 fantasy point performances. And I figure, no way DFS grinders are on this guy this week. Sure enough, he has a top 10% ownership projection per Chris Jimino. Right? We always have one of these moments every week where I'm shocked one way or the other. In this case, I'm very proud. Look at this. There's no game log watching here. There's people just focusing on the right details.
Got to tune into the signal.
If you guys were going to ask me, like, what stack or did we not talk about that feels gross, or like players from that game, I was going to mention the Jets. I mean, they have basically the same team total as the Vikings. It's right there. And Garrett Wilson's going to get fed too. I know he is carrying some ownership. We're looking at like in the teens on him. But I think
I'm sure the optimizer is going to pull in some Garrett Wilson. The optimizer has loved Garrett Wilson all season.
Oh yeah,
he's great with Mike White. He's great. He's been fantastic. So I never thought I'd be saying Mike White makes the Jets go on December 30th of 2022, but the weather's going to be pretty good in Seattle. Who they love keeping the roof open, depending on who's in town. I mean, for December, for January 1 in Seattle and Green Bay, global warming is really hitting hard for the northern part of the country. So.
All right, so now I see Miles Sanders, which I also like this week. We'll get to this game later. He also has been bad, right? Just because hasn't gotten the game scripts, has been averaging 4 fantasy points a game the last 2 weeks. And you're like, okay, people are going to be off him. Oh no, 19%.
Yeah,
number 3 most owned running back. Oh yes, people know. Yeah, and then number 4 on FanDuel. The people know. Oh, this is good. Wow, Jamino's got good ownership. Either he knows stuff that people don't know, or people know what people need to know. Either way, people know what they need to know, and they know the right details this week. And I love it. Keeps forcing in Dylan. There's our Brian Robinson. And look at, we got a Junk Davis in there. Look at that. Just a junky guy that you know is going to go put up numbers with Mike
And
White.
then you get the Falcons defense against David. Is it Blow? It can't
Oh
be
my
Blow.
God. Look at this lineup. This is fantastic. This is tremendous. You get Keenan Allen against some slot corner for the Rams, who's, is hanging on to his last, vestiges of a career. I mean, this is perfect. Look at it. It keeps forcing in Hawkinson. It has no choice but to force in Hawkinson and run it back with Dylan. You didn't put Dylan in there. You didn't put Hawkinson in there.
Yeah, no, they're the default. I mean, here we got a little bit of KJ Osborne.
I knew we were going to get some KJ Osborne, as we should. There's our
Chris Godwin, very juicy this week. I mean,
back
this is
to Sanders. And by the way, there is a setting on the lineup Genius where you can turn down the chalk. If you're worried about the Ingram chalk and all this chalk in here with the Miles Sanders, you can turn the chalk down. We have,
but
I
mean, this
that.
lineup is. I mean, look at the cumulative ownership on this. This is still pretty far off the map because you've got. I mean, looks like Dylan is kind of being forgotten about. Kirk Cousins is fading ownership. I mean, really, it could have been. I think once you get over 120 is when you start even thinking about ownership, and this is like so far from that. So I
think that most of the guys here are going to be chalkier than the ownership. I mean, Osborne's going to have some ownership this week. How can you not play some? How can you not play some Osborne this week? You're going to play some Osborne, right? Everybody.
Oh, here's our first share of Dobbs as the run back.
I knew it. Oh, Ebner, what's he doing in there?
It says ETN.
Why did I think it said Ebner? That was the weirdest thing. I like it. I like ETN in there too. ETN, hey, he had 3 targets. He's one of these days he's going to have more than 3 targets in a game. One of these days. But I think most recently he caught them all. So that's a good sign.
Is there any other variations of Cousins stacks that we should hit before we go on to these other games?
No, man. I love Cousins double stacks are the way to go. I think that was perfect. And I think that's one of the unlocks for this slate are Cousins double stacks, and the other is Justin Fields inverted stacks, where you double stack him with St. Brown and Chark and whoever.
I guess I'm just pretty hell-bent on, if I'm running a Cousins double stack, to making sure I have AJ Dillon in there. I mean, I understand that Dobbs fit. You'd really need those. You would need that anomaly, red zone target share to come to life, I think. But I mean, if Green Bay gets up early, like the odds are pretty good AJ Dillon's dunking in at least one, right? Like maybe even 2.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And Dylan Dobbs is not a lot of ownership, not a lot of salary to devote to the Packers side of that equation. I think it's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, that's great.
And like you said, if the weather's not a concern, which it sounds like it won't be, then I'm far more open to doing a heavier game stack on this game, right? Like you can play 2 Packers and a double stack of Cousins, get like some lineups that are especially heavy on this game, because the ownership's not out of control. I mean, the biggest ownership game is obviously the Lions one, as it seems to be every week. And then I think the ownership's not unreasonably out of control on the Vikings game at the moment. So,
and what's wrong with Tunyon, man? I mean, it would be nice if Tunyon was any kind of option. That would be really helpful, right? He's just not. He's terrible. I mean, one of, if not the worst. I mean, he's worse than Gesicki at this point.
Yeah, he's basically, he and Gesicki are on the same island on vacation right now.
But I mean, he's running. What I'm saying, he's running routes. He's running 20 routes a game. What's going on?
I think it's a good sign that it means Aaron Rodgers has found receivers he trusts, right? Like, I mean, these games where Tunyon would get 12 targets.
Or you need to sprinkle in a little bit of Tunyon. Or Stranger Things, man. Stranger Things. You guys didn't Zylstra just have 3 touchdowns? This is what I'm talking about with tight end, man. You might want to sprinkle a little sprinkle dabble. People are going to look up like, wait, which lineup took down the Millie Maker? Tunyon? God damn it. Who the hell would have done that? Well, a little bit. You put a couple.
Mercedes
if
Lewis caught one last week, right? I mean, how does he's still playing football.
Tunyon's out there, man. He's out there running routes. He's a guy that's out there running routes. His route participation's relatively high. He's
against
explosive.
a bad secondary. Terrible secondary.
They're not going to have Watson. Come on, man. I mean, his route participation took a step down the last 2 weeks because I think with Mercedes Lewis, but it's still 50% of the routes he's running routes. He's either on the field and blocking, or off the field, or on the field and running routes. 50% of the time he's running a route of those three choices.
He has one touchdown. That's remarkable.
It's
Mercedes
weird,
Lewis
right?
has 2 on the season.
Yeah, if I told you that Tunyon would have 10 touchdowns this year, knowing who their receivers were, you wouldn't think that's crazy. You'd be like, I think that's an outlier, right? That's like a Christian Watson level touchdown rate. Okay, that happens, but it's conceivable. Who else are going to throw to in the red zone? Randall Cobb, right? You could have seen that.
And Green Bay passes the ball inside the 10 at the 9th highest clip in the league. How's he only have one touchdown? Like,
it doesn't make any sense.
You know what? Tunyon and Jefferson go together.
I really wanted to play Tunyon this week, and then digging into the numbers, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
This is not good. And then I was like, but do tight ends ever tell you when they're going to score touchdowns? Does any tight end ever give out a smoke signal? Be like, this is the week for me. No, you never know. It's so random.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing with him is, and maybe I'm just digging through the weeds too much, but if I'm playing like super large field stuff, maybe I don't play Tunyon with Dillon, because they're both the inside the 10 guys. Like, that's where they're going to do their damage. I think
that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in lineups where you wouldn't play Dillon.
Right.
Like, who gets the red zone touchdowns? Maybe it's like 2 to Tunyon randomly this week. You never know. I mean, he's out there, and that is his role. I mean, he's getting more snaps, more usage than Lewis. Unless I haven't really dug into the Mercedes Lewis usage. Maybe they've been running so much two tight end sets that it's been that Mercedes Lewis is only running a route on exactly half the number of passing downs of Tunyon, and his snap share has actually dropped down from its high of 55% against the Giants. It's now 60% against Dallas. Mercedes Lewis is down closer to 40% the last few weeks. It's not like Lewis has been really offsetting. I just think game plan. And this is. I don't want to get into this too much. I don't want to talk people into playing a bunch of Tunyon, but like a few Tunyon. I'm just saying, with Watson out and wanting to kind of tilt toward these Cousins double stacks, there's a lot of weird shit that ends up happening. It's kind of like a showdown, right? I think where you're gonna have some random guys that you sprinkle in.
If it's 150, right? If you're making 150 lineups and maybe 25 of them are Cousins doubles, maybe even a little more, you probably want to have Tunyon in like 10% of those. Yeah,
two Tunyons.
Exactly.
I'll take 2 Tunyons.
Take 2 touchdowns from Tunyon.
Yeah.
I just think we talked about Chark and Herbert, and we're talking about Tunyon and like KJ Osborne. It's not like a Hail Mary. These are plausible ways to get guys who very well could score at least once on Sunday.
You get talked into it, man. The guy stacks up so many consecutive games with 4 fantasy points that eventually that game log watching convinces you that he's destined to get 4 the next time. And then when he gets 14, it's just like, whoa, this is crazy.
For what it's worth, Green Bay, according to the Gridiron IQ that we have here at RG, runs the 22nd most 3 wide receiver sets. And if you're down Watson, why would you continue to roll out 3 receivers? They run the 10th most 2 tight end sets, and Minnesota has seen the least amount of 2 tight end sets. So, I mean, I don't know. Anyway, enough Tunyon. My bad.
Yeah.
I saw that and I was like,
they've also, you notice DraftKings has kept Tunyon's salary above 3.5K. which
There's a
makes it.
hard stop in the algorithm that he will not go below.
I know, which
not
tells
selling.
you though, but
Yeah.
others have, like Logan Thomas, Hunter Henry, they've all cratered, right? So it's just that's also gonna be even harder for people to fit him in because they're like, oh my god, I have other options. So anyway, I don't want to talk about Tunyon anymore. I feel like sometimes I feel like we get the downside of us focusing on just a handful of games is that we end up going really deep on a couple guys that don't deserve that level of analysis.
It's the nature of the beast. It was funny when Justin starts mentioning like, oh yeah, we've talked about KJ Osborne and Khalil Herbert. It's like that's the point of this show. It's
we have a 10-minute warning.
Yeah.
So we got to move on. Let's talk about can we talk about the Chiefs? Because we got to talk about Mahomes stacks, right?
Yep. Yeah, this is another week where the Chiefs are double-digit favorites. They're playing a team that they've, dog walked once already this season. Although, to be fair, the Broncos kind of made a comeback in that game. That was a weird one where the Chiefs got out really early, looked like they were just going to completely boat race the Broncos, and then the second half was 3 Jerry Jeudy touchdowns and just a bizarro, like somewhat close game in the final score. So I think that obviously it's another week where you stack Mahomes. Obviously you include Kelsey. Juju is very appealing.
22 fantasy points last time he faced the Broncos.
Mahomes?
Juju. 22 fantasy points.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
And then I think it kind of gets interesting beyond Juju and Kelsey, right? Like, do you sprinkle in Jerick McKinnon, Kadarius Toney, MVS? Is Mecole Hardman going to be active this week? I think when I'm stacking Mahomes this weekend, it's probably one of Kelsey or Juju, and then one of the other like rando sort of secondary pieces in the offense.
So Tony's snap share went from 6.6% up to 30%. His route participation went from 7 to 24. So there could be another jump up in route participation this week. It's possible. If you're applying a trend to what you're seeing.
Yeah, they gave up a 3rd round pick for the guy. If he's healthy, I imagine he's going to play.
I would dabble. I would definitely dabble.
I think that the most important thing for Mahomes is like, don't be scared off by all these stats that say, oh, the Broncos secondary has been the best against opposing quarterbacks all season. Like, those are the kind of things like you can just say thank you to that statistic for keeping the Mahomes ownership tiny bit lower than it should be, and you just keep playing him. I think that's him. Like,
do you prefer Jeudy or Sutton as a run back?
I think it's hard to ignore what Judy's done over the last couple of weeks. I know that we're very pro Sutton in this building, metaphorically, but if you look at Judy's last 3 games, his target shares have just been absolutely ridiculous. Week 16, 29%, pretty good, right? Week 15, 30%, and then I think a couple weeks ago he had a game with like 40% of targets, I thought, but he's averaging 20% over the last 5 weeks, and I think that he's just kind of been 30% and then 20. He's just been the go-to guy in this offense lately. I think that's hard to ignore. And Courtland Sutton, he had his first game back from injury last week, and he only played 66% of snaps, ran 32 routes, which was 3rd most on the team. 36 routes. He also had 20% of the targets. I think they're both in play. I haven't checked yet how much chalk there is on one or the other. It looks like 3.5% projected ownership for Jeudy at the moment. Sutton,
that seems a little low to me.
Sutton's
up over 10 because the salary, people love that salary, dude.
Yeah,
the 5.1K, people love it. Right, that's like a George Pickens salary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's a very different value proposition between the two guys because of that difference in salary. I think you can play them both. I don't know if I have a hard line stance on one or the other at the moment.
I just can't quite get there with Judy. I wish he was better. Right? It's not a Dobbs situation. Like, he is good. He has a skill getting open, right? Creating separation. I don't know what Dobbs' skills are, if there are any that are meaningful. Judy has that skill, and that's a big deal, right? I get that. But everything other than that, like weak hands, week after the catch, everything else weak other than, hey, create separation. And then, and that's the one thing he can do. Sutton can do more. Sutton is much closer to a proper alpha receiver. Why he's disappeared from the offense, I don't know. Right? I don't know. I don't get it. We're gonna have a whole off season to dissect Cortland Sutton and the great disappearance. But it wasn't that long ago that he was, putting up 10, 11 targets a game.
Yeah, I mean, I remember those first 5 weeks or so, he was in our top 15, top 20 rest of season rankings because he was just getting fed. There was a clear sign that he was due for some positive regression, and that just hasn't happened. I mean, I think we'll give him a break that last week it was his first game back and he had Jalen Ramsey matching up on him for, his primary matchup. Still got 131 air yards. I think that there's good reason that he's getting that 10% ownership at his very nice 5,100 DraftKings salary. So I think I'd be in on both this week as run backs. Probably not together because I don't think Russ can support them both, but I think you mix them in both on your Mahomes stacks depending on how the rest of your lineup fits around it.
We got Zonovan Knight, we got Miles Sanders, we've got Cortland Sutton. The projected ownership this week is so sharp. Wow. Great work, everybody. Great work out there, everybody. You're doing great. How about the Eagles? What about the Eagles?
Yeah, I think, for our last two games, I think we can talk about stacking the Eagles and stacking the Jaguars. The Eagles, I think that,
let's just talk about the world where Minshew is the starter. He's been getting most of the practice reps. It's the prudent thing to do. The Eagles are a prudent franchise. We'd all agree they're in the top half of the league. It's just in terms of managing the franchise. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
So they're not going to play him. They know it's not in their best interest to play him.
I think the funny thing is, obviously the Eagles have the Saints first round pick. So their biggest incentive for winning this game is not only clinching the 1 seed in the NFC, but it's, they can remind the Saints that they made a huge mistake by trading them their first round pick, and they can make that first round pick higher for themselves, which I'm sure they would love to do. So I think that they're going to have an incentive to win. It's not going to be like some of these other teams that have already clinched the playoffs and can kind of rest on their laurels.
If they want to play Hurts in the final game to beat the Eagles at home or beat the Giants at home, let them do that. Right? If they need him a week from now, right? And then they clinch and then he rests another week. Right? It's like a warm up. He could even play just the first half against the Giants to clinch. Almost like a preseason game. Like a pre-playoff game. It doesn't make any sense. They're giving Minshew all the practice reps, which is smart. I believe it's going to be Minshew. Minshew's awesome.
Yeah,
I mean, Minshew with a rushing touchdown already. It's just money in the bank, baby. And he's the salary saver quarterback on the slate. He's got the weaponry, the consolidated target share. It's all green lights, man.
Yeah, I will say Minshew. I'm definitely surprised that he's not projecting for higher ownership. He's still very cheap among the quarterbacks, only 5,500. And I mean, last week obviously he was very popular because he was only 4,800, I think it was.
Oh my God.
So he comes up a little bit. He's kind of closer to Russell Wilson and Baker Mayfield and Mike White and all those guys, but he's still just like by far the best value quarterback.
Put up 30 points against Dallas.
Yeah. It's like you can stack him with all the reasons we've been stacking Jalen Hurts all season, except you're $3,000 cheaper at quarterback.
It's amazing. I wouldn't put past anybody to say, hey, this is my highest owned. This is my go-to quarterback. This is the guy I'm playing. If you're in small field tournaments, my guy's Minshew this week.
I'm going to check.
No problem doing that.
Looks like it should be clear in Philadelphia on Sunday too. I mean, it's
Oh, the weather's looking great.
going to be sunny in Philadelphia, believe it or not.
You got low ownership on Devontae Smith. He's up to 7.1K. I love it when that happens, when the guy's salary gets juiced up. It's gone up like 2,000, the last few months. Now he's up over 7K on DraftKings.
AJ Brown is only projecting for 5% ownership.
Yeah, so these guys aren't projecting for. I think it's a muddled quarterback situation. So once they come out and say, hey, Hurts is out, everything's the ownership's gonna jump over to Minshew. We know it's gonna happen, but why would the ownership go up on Smith and Brown in that case, though? I don't think it would. I mean, although, I mean, the probability of Minshew throwing for 300 yards is higher than Hurts.
Yeah,
I mean, this is amazing. This is such a great spot. I love this. I love this so much.
Yeah, I think the Saints don't look like a great matchup on paper because the Saints kind of just like slow a lot of games down. They're very run heavy. They're kind of, I mean, I think they're one of the least exciting teams to watch in the NFL this season. And
still 24 implied points for the Eagles is great.
No, but that's where I was going with that. I think the Saints' overall efficiency on a per play basis defensively is pretty mediocre. I think you can still think about the Saints are very much a league average defense, even though their fantasy points against stats make them look more like a good defense. So I think that's another point in the Eagles' favor for sure.
Kamara returned to practice, personal / quadriceps holding him out. He will likely play. I don't love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think they took him off the injury report entirely, right? He's not going in with a questionable tag or anything. So
I'm seeing a Q tag on DraftKings, but probably not, right? So the question is, Kamara with his whatever it is, 20-point ceiling at this point, going up against a defense you don't want to play anyone against really, especially anyone on the Saints. It's not great, but we don't have, what other options do we have?
I mean, Rashid Shaheed.
You play Olave? I mean, no. Olave is questionable too.
Yeah, Olave hopefully comes back this week.
Oh God, this is not good, man. That's the problem with this. You maybe just have to. What about Goddard?
I think Goddard's interesting too. I mean, he was limited last week, as in he didn't play a full snap share or full route tree. I think that he's still kind of a guy who lives in the area of the field that Gardner Minshew thrives. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a big game. I think it's what we always do with the Eagles. It's Goddard, it's AJ Brown, it's Devontae Smith. Mix and match.
I think you go Shaheed.
Yeah, he's the chalkiest run back, actually. He's looking at his page right now. I'm seeing 9% projected DraftKings ownership, which is
it's close to 7% on FanDuel.
He's getting a target on 19% of his routes. Like, that's no fluke. He's run over 100 routes at this point. I think he's clearly earning some trust in the Saints offense by now.
Yeah, his snap share has been fluctuating between 80 and 65 the last month, right? He's been running anywhere between 15 and 20 routes. It's very consistent. But look at the rate the last 2 weeks. The route participation rate, whenever they go and pass, he's out there. 95 and 93% route participation rate the last 2 weeks. That's jumped up from 65 the previous weeks.
And keep in mind, the Saints played in like a blizzard last week. That 5 targets that he had last week is, I'm guessing it was the most on the team. I'm going to double check that right now, but yeah, he led the team in targets last week. It was a 35% of the team's targets at 5 total targets.
Dude, Shaheed, man. We got 4K Shaheed. We got DJ Chark. We got our inexpensive wide receiver options. We might have to take another look at Shaheed in the player profile or upside projections. The DFS Dominator tool has upside projections. We might have to look at that, Dario.
I haven't talked much, but I swear I've been constructive. According to Packers beat reporter Rob Domboski, Christian Watson was a limited participant today.
Oh,
Oh,
boy.
that's very interesting.
Oh, boy.
Still questionable,
Oh,
obviously.
boy.
So
Okay. No, Dobbs looking less playable.
I
Still
found
playing
that.
Dylan. Still can play Tunyon.
Still sprinkling Tunyon, yeah. And
Doesn't change that a bit.
I was reselling myself also. Just one thing on the Chiefs game, I was reselling myself on Jerick McKinnon for tournaments. Maybe I'm chasing the 30 burger he dropped against the Broncos last time, but I think it's for good reason. Denver is the staple of the we don't let big plays behind us. They are like third last in targets of 20 plus yards downfield. They gave up the second most targets behind the line of scrimmage. Jerick McKinnon literally has a negative ADOT. So Mahomes is just going to keep dumping it off to McKinnon as he's done. I mean, this guy went for 30 plus 2 of the last 3 weeks, and no one wants to play him. Or like,
what is this hip injury that Watson has? I mean, what is this hip injury? Like, what is going on? Why is he in street clothes audit? Why is he instantly ruled out? And then why is he like, they think he's going to practice on Thursday. Then he doesn't quite practice. Then he does practice on a limited basis on Friday. What was the level of participation? What is going on? Tell me.
Let me call my friend who works in the Packers medical staff real quick.
So hard to know whether to play a guy. I mean, do they know? Do the Packers realize he's 5.9K on DraftKings and the Vikings give up the most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers? And this is like the hardest decision of whether or not you would include Watson. Like, he's questionable and his touchdown rate is unsustainable. And yet it's the Vikings and we're desperate for run backs. We can't just put Dylan in every Cousins lineup. Help. We're going to have to play some freaking Watson. And he's going to be chalky probably. Will he be chalky? No. Will he?
Hard to say. I mean,
I have no idea. What?
Jeez, yeah.
I mean, if we had to guess, I wish we had Jamino. We had to bring Jamino in here. Maybe we had Jamino puppet or something. Jamino, what do you think Watson's ownership's going to be if he's active? I mean, you could say 10% and I would believe you. You could say 5%. You could say 15%. I would believe you.
10 to 12.
It's such a good matchup.
And like across the industry, if he's in, like optimizers are just going to be throwing him in there. Like, so by default, he's going to carry some ownership.
So 15.
Maybe. Yeah. Which means what's Tunyon going to be?
3? Oh, stop it.
3 to 4?
Stop teasing me.
I had to poke the bear one more time before we leave.
I know. That was good. Okay, so is there any other? Should we talk about Jaguars before we wrap up?
I think you can stack Lawrence. I mean, he's surprisingly low owned to me. I think for some reason the only chalky Jaguar this week is Evan Ingram. And I mean, he's chalky for good reason, but I think that with how well Trevor Lawrence has been playing over the last month, I think you can play Kirk. I think you can play Zay Jones. I think you can mix in some Trevor Lawrence double stacks. He's in a pretty healthy game environment. They should do well against the Texans. And also keep in mind the Texans have been pretty hot lately. I mean, they're coming off a win against the Titans, and they pushed the Chiefs and the Cowboys the 2 weeks before that. This could be a sneaky competitive game instead of just being a total blowout for the Jaguars. I think that, I mean, Trevor Lawrence has just been playing on another level. Obviously, we all watched that Thursday night game last week in the rain, got pretty gross, but he's still just making good throws. I think you have to play a little bit of Lawrence.
I don't love I don't love this for Lawrence. And again, I've been a Lawrence skeptic of most weeks, and have felt very good about it. This week, I'm not a Jaguar skeptic because I love ETN this week. Like, this is just an ETN week, is it not? Isn't this just an ETN week?
Yeah, it is a good week for ETN too.
I mean, this is Houston is not the worst defense. Like, their defense is better than advertised, and it's especially better than advertised against quarterbacks. Against they have a quality secondary. They have set up a full-blown run funnel defense.
I wonder if Stingley's
This
playing
is the week. Like, remember the reason why I haven't been too run over by Trevor Lawrence is because in the couple of spots where it made sense to play him and he had at least one big game already, we said, yeah, play him, stack him up, sure, yeah, but just make sure that whatever whatever ownership you have at Zay Jones, remember Zay Jones chalk week, like that was just a good example of like, hey, there's common sense things to do, and when Zay Jones is chalk, you don't play him. That's what you do. When Zay Jones is chalk, you don't play him. That's the common sense thing to do. The common sense thing to do, the non-galaxy brain thing to do, is to play ETN at value in the ultimate ETN spot, where he's going to go out and have 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. Even if he does all of his damage on the ground, he'll be great. I just don't get it. Like, how is his ownership lower than Sanders? Like,
I have just the slightest fear of maybe JaMychal Hasty gets a little more work looking ahead at what's to come with the Titans Jaguars, perhaps, playoff type game the last week of the year. Like,
yeah, I think that's
maybe
a slight concern for me too. This game, the Jaguars don't need to win it. I mean, it slightly helps their wild card chances, but really their season lies in next week's game against the Titans. So maybe do they just pull the pedal, like, the
I
foot
would
off
think
the
that
gas?
they would run ETN more in that case. They would run more.
But do they run with Hasty a tiny bit? I think it's a concern. I think it's an interesting point for sure.
It's not a huge concern. I think
it's
I don't know.
A minor one
He's
for sure.
so bad defensively though. He could pop off the home run in the first quarter and get there.
Yeah.
So it's like, is your fast full or happy? So
I mean, their run defense is that bad.
Right. Sorry, you're right.
Totally
Exactly.
true. Their run defense is that bad. Right. And yes, I know Lawrence has been fantastic. Like week 15, week 14, awesome. Right. But there was the game total was low against the Jets, and he was not he was not a great play. He came in under 20 fantasy points. Right? Yes, against Detroit. Yes, you're playing, remember that game? What happened there? Remember that game? We dodged a bullet there, didn't we? Right? But of course, against Tennessee, you're playing Lawrence. You always play quarterbacks against Tennessee. That's like the most obvious thing in the world. And you can't play ETN in that game, right? That was you don't play ETN at all against Tennessee. You do play Lawrence against Tennessee. I didn't see Lawrence putting up 30 against Dallas. Okay. Happy to admit not being on Lawrence that particular week. Okay. Right. Fine.
Anomaly game script for them.
Didn't see it, dude.
Right.
Sorry. Right. Didn't see it. But this doesn't equate. The ways Lawrence pays off is, typically like, oh, you have to have, some probability that there's going to be a shootout. What's the probability that you're going to get a shootout game environment? It's pretty low.
I think it's low, but I will say it's definitely not zero. Cause like I said, the Texans have been ever so slightly more competitive the last 3 weeks, which is, not an insignificant amount of football. The relative importance of this game, and like you say, the Texans run defense scares me off a little bit, but I think that, long story short, you probably do want to be open to playing some Jaguars pieces in this game. I think is kind of what I draw it all back to. Like, they're probably going to put up some points. There's really just not a lot of games with very high totals on this slate after those 2 NFC North games.
I know, that's the thing. There's enough implied points with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
It's a little bit off the beaten path.
24 implied points is really good.
Yeah.
You need pieces. If there's going to be 24 implied points, you need pieces. I agree. I just think that ETN should be the smash of the smashes.
And I think that, ETN's probably the chalkiest, right? He's not.
They on DraftKings, 12.8%, number 7. FanDuel, 10.9%, number 9. He's not even top 5.
Well, I'm saying the chalkiest Jaguar. I suppose the chalkiest Jaguar would be Ingram and then ETN. I probably agree with you that it should be ETN first, but I mean Ingram's also been on a tear lately, so
I have no problem with Zay Jones either.
I mean, listen to this. The last 4 weeks, this is Evan Ingram's finish among tight ends: number 4, number 1, number 6, number 5, with at least 7 targets in each of those games, averaging quick math 10 targets per game. So
he's the oldest 28-year-old in the NFL. And I don't know. Houston does not give up a lot of points to tight ends, so this may not be the week to be on him. But yeah, I'm happy going back to Zay Jones. Whenever Zay Jones isn't like top of the board and on ownership, you can play him, right? And certainly, I'm just that was just one of those. That was one of those. I was surprised very rarely this week with ownership. The ETN one surprised me. I was like, what am I missing here? It feels like the week to play ETN, but hey.
Yeah, I think it's been a little while since we've seen ETN pop, so I think there's a slight bias growing against him, but he is underperforming in terms of touchdowns. Like, he's due for some positive touchdown regression. He had obviously 4 touchdowns come in a span of 3 weeks, hasn't scored outside of that. I mean, if you look at ETN in weeks 5 and 6 and ETN in weeks 15 and 16, it almost looks like a little bit of history repeating itself where he's getting those 100-yard games, but just hasn't found the end zone. I think this could be a watershed week for him.
Yeah. So the quarterbacks we like, Fields, Cousins, Mahomes, Minshew, and I guess Lawrence. I guess we got to play a little Lawrence, even though I hate it.
Yeah,
but definitely just more ETN than Lawrence. That's all I'm going to say. But it looks like by process of elimination, we got to play some Lawrence this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the summary of this slate. It's more games, but somehow less appealing.
I mean, I'm like after 4 quarterbacks, I was like, I don't know, man.
Yeah. But
all right, I think we got it.
That's it. Yeah, four team totals north of 25. So I mean, it kind of makes sense why the pool is limited. So that's it. It's been a pleasure, fellas. Appreciate you having me back.
Yeah, thanks for covering on such short notice. Good to see you again, as always.
Same to you. And of course, now that I know I can say it, Happy New Year. So
Happy New Year.
Let's get out of here. Let's get out of here. For producer Steve, Dario, Matt, and shout out to Bime4. Good luck this week, everybody. Take care and Happy New Year.
DJ Chark.